Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Adam Burke from BangTheBook.com coming to you with a look at the Saturday games for the second round of the NCAA Tournament. 8 games I'm going to run through here as quickly as I can, give you some thoughts for Saturday, March 23rd. Over at BangTheBook.com, lots of great work being done by our very talented cast of writers. We've got previews up for all of the March Madness games, working on the second round here with our group of writers. So we will have previews for every game as we go along. Certainly want to give them a little bit of time to turn those things around for us. Also, Kyle Hunter's daily college basketball picks, Parker Michaels' daily NHL picks, my MLB season win total stuff to go along with my MLB betting tips and players to watch articles. So lots of stuff going on over at BangTheBook.com right now. Make sure you check it all out. Let's take a look at the second round games here for the round of 32 in the NCAA Tournament. We'll roll through these in chronological order here. So we start with Maryland taking on LSU. LSU 2.5-point favorite, total 145. Terrapins got their scare from Belmont. Belmont played very well against Temple in the first game, carried that over, played well against Maryland in the second game. LSU got a little bit of a scare from Yale as well as that game went on. And really, you would think that the quick turnaround without Will Wade would show up here in a spot like this for LSU. A lot of people don't really like Mark Turgeon a whole lot, but obviously LSU without their head coach here, with that quick turnaround, certainly reasons to be concerned about them. Now, the Terrapins do hold the defensive edge in this game, even though they don't force a whole lot of turnovers. In fact, they're 24th in adjusted defensive efficiency, according to Bart Torvik. However, they're 352nd in turnover percentage on defense. So they play very, very good defense in the half court. Problem is they just don't take away possessions from the other team. So we'll see what that does here against LSU. LSU, not a great three-point shooting team. This line actually did go down to 2 at one point, back up to 2.5 here now. I like the over in this game. I know Maryland is a very good defensive team, total 145 here, but they don't take possessions away from the opposition. Belmont got Maryland to speed up a little bit. LSU plays at a quicker tempo as well. So I think we'll look over in this game. Most of these just small leans. These lines look very, very sharp. I'll let you know when it is a play that I do really like, but lean the over here in that Maryland-LSU game. Move on to Wofford and Kentucky. Kentucky 5.5-point favorite, total 138.5. Really disappointed at how screwed Wofford got by this draw. But the nice thing is they beat Seton Hall much more handily than I expected them to. So they didn't spend as much energy in that game as I anticipated. Obviously, Kentucky not spending a whole lot of energy there with Abilene Christian. You really do wonder here about the status of P.J. Washington. If he's able to play for the Wildcats, they could certainly use him here in this game against a team like Wofford. The big question for Wofford here in this game is, can they keep Kentucky off of the offensive glass? And the second biggest question is, can they keep shooting the three ball as effectively as they have all season? It was a barrage against Seton Hall. If they do the same thing against Kentucky, obviously they'll be a very live dog, pardon the pun, with the Terriers. In this game here against Kentucky, Wofford is experienced. They won't be scared of the moment. Their two best players are seniors in Fletcher McGee and Cameron Jackson. So I don't think that they'll be overwhelmed. I don't think that they'll shy away from the spotlight here. The problem is I think Kentucky is just too good on the offensive glass, too good on the defensive glass, and too good on defense overall. If Wofford shoots the lights out, and it certainly is a possibility, then we could be looking at an upset special here with the number 2 going down. If Wofford doesn't, they're not going to get very many second chance points here in this game. So that would be the big concern for me. Does make this a little bit of a higher variance game, but Kentucky minus 5.5 would be the way that I would have to look here. But just because of the nature of March Madness, I am rooting for Wofford in this game. Florida and Michigan here. Michigan 6.5-point favorite, total 122.5. This line did get as high as Michigan minus 8, but now it's come back down into the 6.5 range. Florida gave up lots of offensive rebounds to Nevada in that win over the Wolfpack. And Nevada was not a good offensive rebounding team over the course of the season. Now, that's not Michigan's game either, but you wonder here if Michigan can get some of those extra possessions. Very troubling performance on the glass from Florida in that first-round game. Now, that being said, this is going to be a super slow-paced game. Florida effectively controlled the tempo in the game against Nevada, really slowed the Wolfpack down. Late in the game, the Wolfpack were kind of slowing themselves down, maybe the pressure getting to them a little bit. But that's a Wolfpack team that had an adjusted tempo during the year of 70.3 possessions per game, only 63 possessions in that game against Florida. I expect this game to maybe be as slow or even slower than that between Florida and Michigan. Give me under 122.5. I guess it's a very grinded out type of game. This is one of the plays I do like a little bit more for the Saturday card in the NCAA tournament. Another game here, Murray State and Florida State. Florida State 5-point favorite, total 144. Went 2-1 on my picks in the Thursday 3-pack article. The one I missed badly, and it was that Murray State Marquette game. Murray State, fantastic. John Morant, everything that you would want him to be. 16 dimes in that game there, really using his teammates effectively. That's the question I have in this game for Murray State, is that in that game, outside of guys named Morant, 18 of 21 shooting from 2, 7 of 16 from 3. Can they do that again against a very long, very athletic Florida State team? Now, Florida State had its problems with Vermont. I don't think Leonard Hamilton's a very good coach. That would be a little bit of a concern to me here in this game, because you wonder, will Florida State put too much emphasis and too much of its defensive efforts on Morant, who obviously can use his teammates? He only had 17 points in that game, but Murray State hung 83, and he had the 16 assists. So the supporting cast did play well for Murray State. That was the question I had in that Marquette game. Can they do it again here against a Florida State team that, look, is very athletic, very sound offensively, pretty good defensive team as well. They're a better rebounding team than Marquette, which should help them here in this spot. And Marquette, look, another one of those games where the opposition, much like the Florida-Nevada game, was very good on the offensive glass, but just didn't make enough shots. Marquette had 19 offensive rebounds, but they were 8 of 31 from 3. So factor that into the equation, and also the fact that Murray State's complementary pieces to Morant really shot the lights out in that game against Marquette. I'm not sure that happens again. I'll take Florida State minus the 5. Again, just a lean here in this one because I don't want to get fully burned on Murray State again. But I would be surprised if everybody not named Morant has as big of a game. And who knows? Maybe Morant goes off here from a point-scoring standpoint, but I'll pay to see it by looking at Florida State. We move on to Baylor and Gonzaga here. Gonzaga 13-point favorite, total 148. Gonzaga has to be thrilled not to see Syracuse here in this game. Baylor with a fantastic offensive performance against the Orange. 16 of 34 from 3, 12 of 18 from 2. Can that happen again? Can they do that against this Gonzaga team? Baylor, not a great defensive team. And also, this game looks like it's going to be outside of fouling range. Again, Gonzaga 13-point favorite, total 148. I sort of wonder here if Gonzaga hanging 100 on Fairleigh Dickinson and what Baylor did to Syracuse has kind of inflated this total a little bit for this game. I know both of these teams very good from an offensive efficiency standpoint. Gonzaga a little bit quicker on the tempo side than Baylor. Usually the better team does dictate the tempo, but to me this total looks a couple of points too high. I'd wait on this one and see if this total keeps going up, but right now I'd lean the under, and if we get into the 152, 153 range, as more public money gets invested in that game tomorrow, maybe then at that point it would become a play that I'm a little bit stronger on. Minnesota and Michigan State. Michigan State 10-point favorite, total of 142. Sparty had problems with Bradley, but you have to think that of the Thursday games, Michigan State one of the biggest winners because Louisville did not play well. Louisville, to me, is a much more dangerous team than Minnesota in this 7-10 versus 2 game. So now you get the 10-seed Minnesota. I think Michigan State has to be happy to see a team that they're very familiar with. And also, too, it almost feels like Minnesota won already in the sense that Richard Pitino, after the game, talking about how he handled the family business with everything that went on with Louisville and his dad, Rick Pitino. That felt like a real big rallying point, a circle the wagons type of game for Minnesota. I don't know if they have that in them again here against Michigan State. Michigan State did get that scare from Bradley. Tom Izzo, in the spotlight for his aggressive coaching methods. Maybe that's the wake-up call that Michigan State needed. I won't play this one. I think 10 is a pretty good number here. Total of 142, probably pretty good as well. Would lean Sparty if I had to play it, but I don't love anything in that 10 versus 2 game. Villanova and Purdue here. Purdue a 4-point favorite, total 137. I don't think Villanova's win was as close as it looked against St. Mary's. 1.098 points per possession for Villanova, 1.026 points per possession for St. Mary's. That was a game played at a snail's pace. Very, very slow. One of the slowest games in college basketball this year. Two very good coaches there, and Jay Wright and Randy Bennett. You kind of wonder about this line, though, with Purdue only -4. Bart Torvik's website has this game -6.2. Does this have something to do with Villanova's NCAA tournament history? And furthermore, does it have something to do with Purdue's lack of NCAA tournament success? So is this line a little bit depressed because of some recency bias with these two teams? I certainly think that that's a possibility. I do think Purdue has the stronger stat profile, played in the much tougher conference. Villanova does have fewer demons in this tournament and also the better head coach in Jay Wright. So no play for me here. If I had to do anything, I'd lean Villanova. But again, Purdue, the better stat profile. Maybe this line depressed a little bit because of the tournament success for both teams. If this one goes down, maybe you do have to consider taking a shot with the Boilermakers in this one. Finally, the last game for Saturday here, Auburn, 2-point favorites, 147.5 the total against Kansas. On Auburn nail-biter, will that have any impact on this game? They went down to the wire with New Mexico State. Very well could have lost that game. Very well could have gone to overtime if that Aggies player takes that layup instead of kicking it out for the potential game-winning three. The one thing is Auburn used their bench very effectively in that game against New Mexico State. They were still able, in that close game, to not burn anybody out. And that matters here because Kansas won in blowout fashion over Northeastern. Nobody logged a big chunk of minutes in that game for the Jayhawks. So they are a little bit fresher than Auburn here. But, this is such an interesting game for a variety of different reasons. Kansas very shorthanded without the injured and suspended guys. Auburn chucks a ton of threes, 49.7% of their field goal attempts coming from beyond the arc. So how will they shoot? Will they make shots? Also, Auburn does a good job forcing turnovers. Kansas not particularly good at taking care of the basketball this year. Will Auburn get some of those extra possessions? I think they will. I think this is just a down year for the Kansas program with the guys that they lost. I'll take Auburn here. Auburn, they survived a scare, but sometimes those things aren't a big deal in the NCAA tournament. It's good to play those late game close situations. Maybe that does help the Tigers as they move forward here. So I do like Auburn -2. So those are the 8 Saturday games. Make sure you check out the previews over at BangTheBook.com for all of these matchups. And I'm Adam Burke for Bang the Book.